WP TV1 Live. We're currently covering the P. Diddy trial as they give live updates. And I sort of want to give my commentary as we go on. And they pretty much accurate of what they're saying. They have reporters right there in the courtroom. So far, what do we know? Kid Cudi is slated to testify. Cassie's mother testified. Her former BFF testified. So without further ado, let's go in and see what they're saying about this trial.
They could see the machinery in person. In addition to the parts of the gun, they also show the jury magazines and bullets that were found in Combs's bedroom closet. His testimony will resume, and then they are also expected to get to a psychologist, a former employee of Combs, and then, if there's time, rapper Kid Cudi could be on the stand this afternoon. Sean?
We know you will be in the court.
So yes, they brought up those guns, and this case is getting really, really deep. So they still bringing up a lot of this battery stuff with Cassie, but let's listen to more.
Just want to know, by the way, defense wants to know, you're suing him. Is that fair to say? And that is Sean Combs. And as a result of that, you have a financial motivation. Isn't that true? And so, yes, of course, you're going to have witnesses. Every witness is going to try to check a box for prosecutors to prove the overall goal that they're trying to make, that this was a criminal enterprise that dealt with sexuality and this exploitation. And you're going to have the defense say nonsense. It's about free will. It's about witnesses who are bitter, who are motivated by a number of things, and that their client certainly knew that people had free will and agency. And he did, right? Nothing criminal. He did and engage in a freaky lifestyle to his liking. So those are the narratives that are competing, Polo.
And finally, how many of those boxes do you think the prosecution has been able to actually successfully check? And looking ahead to the next witnesses, do you think that the questioning should really focus on his history of domestic violence, or perhaps shift gears and focus on that criminal enterprise element?
Yeah, what they have to do is that prosecutors need to establish that he had this enterprise and that he was running an enterprise, and that enterprise consisted of kidnapping, consisted of arson, consisted of all of this bad behavior that you see enterprises have, this assault of behavior, these guns, these drugs, and that he was running it exclusively for his sexual gratification. What you'll see, Polo, is each witness attempt to check a box in that regard. Is it an overreach? It remains to be seen. Many in the defense community believe that the issue about running a criminal enterprise might be a bridge too far. Could this be certainly issues pertaining to prostitution? Yes. Sex trafficking? Potentially. But running a criminal enterprise as opposed to an enterprise that was predicated upon being a music mogul is a different story. And so I think they will continue to. One witness is going to establish your case. It's going to be a series of witnesses over a series of time that's either going to show whether this was indeed, as we look at those pictures there from the hotel of things broken and destroyed, right? Every witness is going to continue to build and build and build, and whether they lay prosecutors a foundation of an enterprise.
You have an endless scope of freelancers at your fingertips to help you progress in whatever category you need. My business is entertainment.
Turn that down for a minute. That's one of the issues people are having with this case. They want to see this criminal enterprise. The sexual trafficking part, I pretty much think they proved that part, but what about the RICO part? And they're going to bring up all these witnesses and sort of kind of build that. Let's go.
Her mother, who testified that Combs beat her daughter when he learned of her involvement with Kid Cudi. The mother took photos of her daughter's bruises and said Combs demanded that she wire him $20,000. The jury also heard from a male exotic dancer who testified that Combs paid him to have sexual encounters with Ventura in hotel rooms. CNN's Kara Scannell outside the courthouse for the latest.
So if she got some money and gave it to him, how did she send it to him? If she did that, if that's true, that's wire fraud. I'm not in here to throw this guy in jail.
He had a relationship with Ventura, and we're in the moment of this case where the testimony has been about that. That is in part what Cassie Ventura's mother testified about yesterday when she said that she'd received this demand from Combs for $20,000, that she said she felt she had to pay for her daughter's safety. This comes as Cassie Ventura had sent her mother an email saying that Combs was about to go public and release 2 sexually explicit videos. And she also told her mother that Combs had threatened to have someone physically harm herself, that's Cassie Ventura, as well as Kid Cudi, who she started dating at this period in their relationship. So that all comes together as how prosecutors were suggesting the mother made this payment of $20,000. Now, the $20,000 was returned with no explanation, but part of this moment in the testimony where that's where we expect Kid Cudi to be asked about that as well as
nobody expected Kid Cudi to be testifying in this case.
was on the witness stand last week.
This is ambush. This is how lawyers do. They ambush you with some of their evidence. And in the federal case, I learned that they can do that. So some of this information may not get to the defense like they would in the state trial. They can actually ambush you on this federal stuff.
AR-15s, and he was on the witness stand. There was a metal evidence cart beside him. He put on blue latex gloves, picked up a piece of one of the AR-15s in the evidence bag, cut it open, took it out, and walked it over to the jury so they could see the machinery in person. In addition to the parts of the gun, they also show the jury magazines and bullets that were found in Combs's bedroom closet. His testimony will resume, and then they are also expected to get to a psychologist, a former employee of Combs, and then, if there's time, rapper Kid Cudi could be on the stand this afternoon. John?
We know you will be in the courtroom. Great to have you there. Kara Scannell, thank you very much. This morning...
Oh, you didn't? Why? So that goes to the issue of credibility. It goes to the issue of bias. Going further into it, now prosecutors want to know, by the way, defense wants to know, you're suing him. Is that fair to say? And that is Sean Combs. And as a result of that, you have a financial motivation. Isn't that true? And so, yes, of course, you're going to have witnesses. Every witness is going to try to check a box for prosecutors to prove the overall goal that they're trying to make, that this was a criminal enterprise.
They're going to test your credibility.
Sexuality and this exploitation. And you're going to have the defense say nonsense. It's about free will. It's about witnesses who are bitter, who are motivated by a number of things, and that their client certainly knew that people had free will and agency. And he did, right? Nothing criminal. He did and engage in a freaky lifestyle to his liking. So those are the narratives that are competing, Polo.
And finally, how many of those boxes do you think the prosecution has been able to actually successfully check? And looking ahead to the next witnesses, do you think that the questioning should really focus on his history of domestic violence, or perhaps shift gears and focus on that criminal enterprise element?
Yeah, what they...
No commercial. Let me skip past this. Skip past that. And let's go.
Consisted of kidnapping, consisted of arson, consisted of all of this bad behavior that you see enterprises have, this assault of behavior, these guns, these drugs. Now, he was running it exclusively for his sexual gratification. What you'll see, Polo, is each witness attempt to check a box in that regard. Is it an overreach? It remains to be seen. Many in the defense community believe that the issue about running a criminal enterprise might be a bridge too far. Could this be certainly issues pertaining to prostitution? Yes. Sex trafficking? Potentially. But running a criminal enterprise as opposed to an enterprise that was predicated upon being a music mogul is a different story. And so I think they will continue to. One witness is going to establish your case. It's going to be a series of witnesses over a series. One witness is going to establish your case. It's going to be a series of witnesses over a series of time that's either going to show whether this was indeed, as we look at those pictures there from the hotel of things broken and destroyed, right? Every witness is going to continue to build and build and build. And whether they lay prosecutors a foundation of an enterprise, a foundation of sexual exploitation, a foundation of the sex trafficking, a foundation of prostitution is going to remain to be seen as they bring forth witnesses day by day, week by week.
There is a lot to watch out for, Joey Jackson, and we are so happy to have you there to provide this valuable insight. Appreciate you, Joey. Have a good rest of your day.
So I'm going to switch gears here and switch to another news outlet and continue to follow the updates on the P. Diddy trial. Kid Cudi is slated to testify Cassie's mother testified yesterday. Her former BFF testified as well. So let me switch to another news that is covering this story. This story is getting deep, you know, and many people is waiting on them to get to the racketeering charges, and we think that most people think this is a reach for a RICO thing. You know, I personally think he and them are on all the wrong charges. You know, the stuff that he does, that's just my opinion. The sexual charges and all this stuff, and I think that she was complicit in all of this, and the psychological part that comes with that. You know, you'll go back to the old boyfriend or old girlfriend or whatever. You keep going back and forth.
Are you a full stack marketer spending all day switching between platforms?
People question whether you keep going back and forth, and you've been there for like 10 years. So that's going to be questionable right there. So they got to bring in a lot more witnesses for this. The guns and all this stuff, you know, you gotta answer for that. You know, you just can't have these fire weapons with the serial number scratched off of there. So that's another issue for that. And I'm not really trying to come up a bunch of stuff that's actually going against him or whatever. And I think his defense is doing a great job, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion. I think they're doing a good job proving their case that this is domestic violence, and some of these people were willing to stay there. You know, I think he's bipolar. He switches people when he's back his normal self. He's P. Diddy, the mogul and all that stuff. But when he get on all those drugs and start dipping into his addictions and all that stuff, that's when he turn into this monster type guy. Usher and Neo was named in this trial as well. So we had to find out more information about that. But they've been mentioned in this trial. I wonder what they were saying about those guys. I really am interested in that. But let's check this one out instead. Stop sharing my screen right here and switch to this one because they're not ready on that one yet. But let's see what they're talking about. They still just outside the courtroom right now. Still want to share this screen right here. Yeah, Diddy trial. Yeah, but who else? Okay. Currently on the stand is Dr. Don Hughes, clinical and forensic psychologist. And, you know, they bring these people in to explain the psychology of it, but still, that's not explaining the RICO charge. The RICO is supposed to be mafia style type stuff. And when you look at all the history of RICO charges, it's not going to be a lot of people beating up girlfriends and stuff like that. Like, who does that? Like, really? Hold on, I think I'm on the wrong page here. Let me stop sharing that one. I need to switch to the second one. Let me go back here, share it again. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's go to this one instead and see what that says. See if that's the right one. Still keep going to the wrong one. Let me get to the right one. And share this screen right here. Yeah, I think that's it right there. Oh, why I keep doing that? I don't want Fox. I want this one. But yeah, it's just an update. Following the trial, getting real-time updates. You stopping by, checking me out. Let me see if this is it. I think this is it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Let's try it now. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is an update and keeping up with the P. Diddy trial. And it's
Spider's one of my secret weapons.
Right on the stand right now, they have a psychologist and forensic doctor. And they're going to explain abuse, and pretty much explain why Cassie kept going back to this guy. Even though she's supposed to getting brutalized, you're getting beaten and all this type of stuff. And her mother got on the stand and she said she sent P. Diddy $20,000. She ended up getting it back. But the only problem with that is you can't do that. It's like fraud or whatever. So people saying they don't see the criminal stuff he's doing. He's doing a lot of criminal stuff, but is it a RICO charge? I don't think he is getting this RICO charge. I really don't. And I think that a lot of other people don't see this RICO charge. But anyway, we're going to keep y'all updated on what's going on right here on GPTV1. We like to come with all the fire stories, fire coverage. Yeah. Currently, everybody's waiting on the real-time updates from the reporters. They're right there in the courtroom. So stay tuned for all of that. This is GPTV1 live stream covering the Diddy trial, waiting on updates as a clinical and forensic doctor is testifying right now. Stay tuned. Right now, we're covering the P. Diddy trial, waiting on live updates from reporters that's right there in the courtroom. Kid Cudi is slated to testify sometime today. Right now on the stand is Dr. Don Hughes, clinical and forensic psychologist. Right now, I'm covering the P. Diddy trial, and we're waiting on live updates. Right now on the stand is Dr. Don Hughes, clinical and forensic psychologist, and Kid Cudi is slated to testify later on today. This Dr. Don Hughes is basically on the stand to explain the psychology of abuse. And I guess they're going to try to explain away why Cassie kept coming back to this situation. As many people question why you keep going back to this abuse. And that's sort of the psychology that goes along with that. But that's why they got this person on the stand to sort of explain the psychology victims going back to the abuser. So, but still, that's not saying something about the RICO charge. We want to hear the RICO stuff. That's what they're missing in this trial. And I don't think the prosecution is doing a good job of that. And I watch court TV all the time, like Law and Crime. I watch these channels all the time. So I'm always watching court proceedings. And I'll give credit where credit is due, whether it's the prosecution or the defense. If you got a good lawyer, I'll give you credit for that. And that's why I think they injected this female into this case. If you notice, one of his other lawyers got off the case, but this female is she know how to handle other females and female victims in terms of questioning them while they're on the stand. So that person didn't try to get Cassie all riled up, but give credit where credit is due. Diddy's lawyers is raising some doubt, and a lot of elements of this does have something to do with domestic violence. And people keep saying they don't see the criminal. They may not be saying that correctly. What he's doing is criminal, but is it a RICO charge? That's the question here. So we all waiting on that. So Kid Cudi and all these witnesses. Now, mind y'all, this thing is lasting 8 weeks. So they got a lot more stuff to go through. So right now, we just not seeing this RICO charge in particular. I see a few people in here. This is the P. Diddy trial. We're waiting on more updates. They have this doctor on the stand right now. It's pretty much because they don't have any cameras in the courtroom when it comes to those federal charges. So it's all kind of reporters inside the courtroom. They come out every now and then and give updates of what's going on in there. So we're waiting on the next update. Also, they brought up the fact about those guns, so they had a federal agent testify as well. So, uh, like people saying, what's the criminal? What's the criminal? Whether it's a racketeering charge or not, but he still got to answer for those fire weapons where the serial numbers are scratched off of them. That's a federal offense. You automatically go to jail for that. So, is it a life sentence? I don't know. And I'm still going to maintain and say P. Diddy is up there on the wrong charges. You know, I think he should be on murder charges for Biggie and Tupac, but that's my opinion. So it's just my opinion. So Cassie's mother also testified, and she said she sent P. Diddy $20,000, even though she got it back. But she said she was coerced into giving him that $20,000 because he threatened to release these sexual videos of Cassie. And I'm pretty sure he used that stuff over her head, and I still think that she doing the same thing he doing. So, but that's just my personal opinion. And then they had a federal agent testify, and her former BFF, she also testified. So this stuff is getting deep, and we got a long way to go. So. I see a few people stopping by. Shouts out to y'all. So right now, I'm going to step away from that, and I really want to go over this other coverage where it's talking about Usher and Neo. So I'm going to switch my screen over to this other report, and I want to see what they're saying about Neo and Usher that's brought up in this trial right here. And we all know Usher got some strange type of history with P. Diddy. I want to share my screen here. This is GPTV1 Live. I want to thank you for stopping by. Click the like button and share this live stream. Let's share my screen again. And I want to go to this and just to see, and we'll get back to the Diddy trial updates in 1 second, in a few minutes. So let's check out what they're saying about Neo and Usher.
Sex trafficking and racketeering trial. Why were singers Usher and Neo brought up in the courtroom? We're diving into the connection these A-listers and music legends have to the now disgraced music mogul, and what the night in question that a witness claims they were in attendance for means to how this trial could play out. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Sean Combs is connected to a lot of big names in Hollywood and the music industry. That's not breaking news, but it was a bit of a surprise this week when Usher and Neo's names came up during testimony. The witness that brought up Neo and Usher was Dawn Richard. She was once a member of the singing group Danity Kane. That group was signed to Diddy's label, Bad Boy Records, and she also sang for another bad boy group called Diddy Dirty Money. Sean Combs was actually part of that group. It was a trio. They had a few songs that came out between 2009 and 2011. Prosecutors called Richard to testify. Now, before I get into the moment where Usher and Neo were brought up, I want to take you through her testimony and what led to the point that she brought was making eggs.
Trying to get to the Neo part. I don't really want to go through our testimony and all of that. So just trying to get to the Neo and Usher part. D-Rock, what are they saying?
President. And Richard says Harv Pierre, Capricorn Clark, Mia, D-Rock,
they
eligible for a lawsuit. Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients follow that line in their questioning. They did ask about bad boy employees who were present at the restaurant, to which Richard named people like Combs, the bodyguard D-Rock, Pierre the executive. But then the defense had their chance at cross-examination, and through their questioning, is when we saw those big names drop. The defense asked Richard, please tell me who was all at this restaurant. Richard answers, Harv Pierre, Capricorn Clark, Mia, and myself, Kalina, our bodyguards, which was Bonds, and D-Rock, Cassie. The question continues with the defense asking, you remember who was all there, right? And Richard says, mm-hmm. The defense asks, do you recall alleging several celebrities were actually there? And Richard says yes, and the defense then says, quote, so when the government asked you who was all there, and I asked you who was all there right now, you didn't mention any of the celebrities, right? Right, Richard says. The defense then asks Richard to name the celebrities. And then she says, quote, Usher was there, Jimmy Levine was there, Neo came through. There were a few others too. I don't recall those people, but those are the ones I remember talking to. The defense then pressed Richard a bit, asking why she didn't say those names before when she was asked about who was there by the defense. And Richard says she was just repeating what she told the government in their direct examination. Usher and Diddy go back decades. Usher lived with Combs for a year, actually, when he was just a rising star in the music industry. He was 13, 14 years old at the time. Usher actually spoke about living with Combs in an interview 8 years ago on the Howard Stern show. Here's part of what he said.
You're going to go to Puff Daddy's. He's going
in the 90s. Do you understand what that's like?
Puffy's place was like just filled with chicks and orgying like nonstop, right?
No, not really. I mean, but hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Now, as far as Grammy winner Neo, he is someone who has been known to be a friend of Diddy and to be in the same social circles over the years. He faced backlash for a comment he made in the wake of Diddy's arrest during a performance in New Zealand last year, where he reportedly said, quote, on stage, I was sexually assaulted and I liked it. I had a great time and I'd do it again. He later apologized for that and said, quote, in an attempt to be playful with my fans, I made an insensitive and irresponsible joke while on tour, and I'd like to truly apologize from the bottom of my heart. This is according to the UK media outlet, The Metro. Now, the other name that Richard mentioned was Jimmy Levine.
So they sort of just explaining the background of Neo and Usher with P. Diddy and Jimmy Iovine, because I think he took Bad Boy to Interscope at one time. But it's not, I'm thinking they probably the freak offs and all that type of stuff. So I want to get back to the trial and stay with the updates on that. So I'll go back here and share my screen and go back to the trial. So that's what's I just wanted to know what was going on with this Neo and Usher thing. So let's go back here. Yeah. Currently covering the P Diddy trial right here on GPTV1 Live, and we're waiting on more updates coming out of the courtroom. So, as of now, they had a doctor that was on the stand and sort of explaining the psychology of abuse and why Cassie kept going back to this situation. So that's what they pretty much doing right now, and I think everybody's waiting on Kid Cudi. So we can't wait to see that. What's going on with him? And it's been allegations that P Diddy blew up his car. So but we'll see. We'll see.
By the way, as you're watching this Diddy trial, I think it emphasizes how important having a great lawyer is, and that is where our partner and sponsor Morgan & Morgan comes in. So this is a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they have so many? Because they win a lot. In the past few months, Morgan &
That's him advertising about Morgan & Morgan, and I just got through talking about the importance of having a good lawyer, and that's how so many people from poverty areas, they go to courts and fight all these cases and stuff. They don't have real good lawyers. They get a lot of court-appointed lawyers, and I'm not saying all of them people are bad, but still, it's always good to have a good lawyer in your corner. Hope everybody's having a blessed day today, but let's finish following this trial. A live report from the courthouse is coming next, so we'll see what's going on inside of there.
By the way, as you're watching this Diddy trial, I think Hey everybody, welcome to our live lunchtime show on Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber as we cover the Sean Combs criminal trial. As I said, they're currently in a lunch break, which gives us an hour to really dissect what has happened today and so far in this case. We're going to be taking your questions on YouTube, so submit them. If you have questions about today's testimony, about what's been happening in the case, what you expect is going to happen. We can talk about how Kid Cudi planning to testify this week. That's going to be pretty big. Submit them. We'll talk about it. And also, as soon as they go back live in court, since there are no cameras, we're going to give you real-time updates about what's happening and break it down in real time. But before I get into all that, I want to bring on right now Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who is inside that courtroom. We have limited time with Elizabeth. I know she has to jump right back in there. Elizabeth, good to see you. Talk to us about the day, how it started with the continuation of the testimony of this special agent from Homeland Security that was part of the raids that were conducted on Sean Combs' property, and what evidence was found, or potential evidence. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, this testimony is something I myself have been very interested in. And this is no offense to all the witnesses that have been testifying, but I really just wanted to see the physical evidence and see especially what was found in those raids. And so Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent Jared Gammon, he took the stand actually yesterday afternoon, and he had first kind of started going over some of the exhibits, especially what was found in the Miami home, and that's the home on Two-Star Island, excuse me. So they didn't talk about the LA homes or anything like that as far as what was found in that particular home. Really was just focusing on the Miami estate, essentially, because it's a huge property. And so we found out yesterday that 80 to 90 officers were involved in this search, and a lot of the stuff from today was a little just kind of continuation about everything that was found. So we saw a lot of exhibit photos, and I took, Jesse, a lot of notes, because at this point it was just so many exhibits back to back to back to back that you just were so overwhelmed by everything that was found, essentially. And so we learned yesterday that there were AR-15s inside the Miami property with the scratched off serial numbers. We saw that there were platform high heels that were 7 inches tall inside this Miami home. There were sex items inside this home found in the primary bedroom closet. There were then we got a close up of the red high heels and the sex toys, and then these high heels were actually displayed in front of the jury. So Special Agent Gannon, he just took up the heels, kind of showed them to the jury, then put them back into the evidence box, and then kind of had it with the rest of the evidence. And so they said more than a dozen high heels were actually seized from this property. Then we saw some shoes, we saw some boots in the primary.
These high heels got to do with this case.
Special boots. They were Balenciaga boots that I myself cannot necessarily afford. But inside these boots were 3 cell phones. Diddy didn't have much reaction during this testimony, but it was interesting that these cell phones were found in these Balenciaga boots that were inside the closet. And so we also saw a black Gucci bag that was also found inside the closet, and inside that Gucci bag was pills, a powder substance. There was also eye drops in the bag. And so, you know, that Dr. Seuss kind of story, red fish, blue fish, all that stuff, that was essentially kind of the same thing with pills. And I'm not making light of the situation. There were pink pills, there were white pills, there were yellow pills, there were black pills, there were blue pills,
all kind of stuff,
crystallized substance. So inside that Gucci bag, some of the residue found inside actually tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. And then they saw
safe to say
black
Diddy is a
that
junkie.
was also found in this Gucci bag. It also tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. We saw the Lumify eye drop label, the Lumify eye drop label bottle. So initially, I was thinking these were just regular eye drops, but turns out that these eye drops actually tested positive and contained MDMA as well as ketamine. Then we saw a
man, you putting that stuff in your eyes?
It had kind of the label on it, DBL wash, and that tested positive for cocaine. It was a lot of stuff, Jesse, that we were seeing inside these exhibit photos. A lot of these were pills, tested positive for MDMA. 3 orange pills with a triangular shape that were referred to or had a Tesla label on them. Those tested positive for MDMA. We saw 6 rectangular tablets. Those tested positive for alprazolam, aka Xanax. We saw more Xanax pills in there. We saw a $100 bill that was rolled up that tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. We saw a blue tablet that tested positive for meth and MDMA. Another blue pill that had the same test results. We saw more Xanax pills. Then we get into the master bathroom and we see more exhibit
Puff
photos.
ever
So
felt
we see
normal.
an exhibit photo of the master bathroom and a close-up of this wooden box. And this wooden box had the kind of inscription on top labeled Puffy. And so we got to see what was inside that box.
I thought you was
Clear
P.
pills,
Diddy.
a crystallized substance in that box, and then these capsules that were called golden teachers. And I was like, what are golden teachers? And they are actually mushroom capsules. And so those were displayed to the jury. We saw Ziploc bags of a purple solid crystallized type of material that tested positive for MDMA, ecstasy, as well as Molly. We see more kind of labels of what was going on inside the home.
We don't play no role in their
We saw
household.
zoomed in bottles of baby oil and Astroglide. The special agent said that he had seized 25 bottles of baby oil and 31 bottles of Astroglide from the home, but he said that there was actually more baby oil and more Astroglide that was found. We saw the master closet, which had this vital honey. They didn't go too much into the explanation of what this vital honey actually is. We saw the layout of the guest house, and then we see a handgun as well, too, that was in one of the utility closets in a suitcase. It was a .45 caliber handgun. They displayed the handgun in court today, and they also seized the magazine ammunition for this .45 caliber handgun. They displayed this magazine to the jury again, as well as the handgun, and then we saw the box of ammo as well too. So Jesse, it was a lot of stuff, and I'm really just not even scratching the surface of just every single exhibit photo.
So
that we
I guess
saw.
he have all these weapons
either
around, and
a
that's
lot of,
supposed to
drugs,
put fear in people because they know he got those weapons around.
Serial number, something that we had known about for a while now, but it was a lot of stuff, but a very interesting testimony, but not seeing too much really reaction from Diddy when all of this evidence was being displayed in court today.
Because it might not seem on its face how it's relevant to the case. I think it's relevant to the racketeering charge. Remember?
Yeah, all that part is the racketeering part.
With intent to distribute is one of the underlying predicate crimes, of racketeering. So having these materials, or allegedly having these materials and the guns, go to this idea of, a criminal enterprise. And I'll talk more about it. And I understand on cross-examination, the defense focused on the fact that Combs wasn't there during the raids. There was no evidence that he was holding or using the guns. They criticized the level of force. Talked about fingerprints that could have been obtained from the weapons. I want to talk actually about Dr. Dawn Hughes before I let you go.
No matter if it's
Dr. Dawn Hughes, right? This forensic psychologist testified in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. We knew she was going to take the stand in support of understanding Cassandra Ventura Fine's actions during this 11-year relationship, not leaving during this relationship, to help her credibility. What did we learn from Dr. Dawn Hughes' testimony so far today?
Yeah, we kind of learned a lot, especially for people who may not be familiar with her work or who speak to forensic psychologists necessarily every single day. And so we learned a little bit just from her perspective on just kind of the role she would be providing as far as testimony goes. And so she was going to be touching on points such as why do individuals stay in domestic violence relationships?
That's what I was
saying.
saying.
Why is there this delayed disclosure, and even just kind of recalling memories from traumatic events. And so, when they were kind of establishing the foundation before her testimony, the prosecution just kind of came out forthright and just said that essentially that she was being compensated for her testimony today, $6,000 just to testify, which is a lot of money. I'm not going to lie about that. But as far as just more of just what she was talking about just about physical abuse, and when victims are hit, that their reaction normally is fear, and so they sometimes have that pattern of they sometimes have a hard time breaking that pattern. Then she got into physical abuse and how physical abuse, I said physical again, I meant psychological abuse. That psychological abuse is all about threatening physical violence, and that for the most part victims are kind of walking on eggshells, and these symptoms kind of include depression, PTSD, anxiety. Then
PTSD definitely comes along with trauma.
How that is a private harm, and just some of the highest types of traumatic stress go into that, and that a lot of victims actually experience shame when it comes to sexual abuse. She touched base on emotional abuse as well too, and she had said when we belittle and demean and put down our partner. That kind of is falls into emotional abuse. If you can't talk about what's happening, how can you necessarily get help? She talked about financial kind of constraints as far as why victims may not leave because of financial reasons. And then she had said that you need tangible reasons to leave. So how do you leave if you don't have tangible resources? And so that was kind of the basis, because there were a lot of objections today, Jesse. Despite the defense saying that they weren't going to have a bunch of objections. But one of the cool things I would say about the cross-examination is that we got to see Jonathan Bach actually kind of in action for the first time. He's one of Diddy's newest attorneys. I think he makes attorney number 9. And so I was kind of wondering during the cross-examination, because we did get to that before the lunch break, but whether or not these jurors were kind of like, who is this guy and why is he showing up on day 8 of trial? And so I was kind of curious what was going through their mind on seeing this new face today.
Hopefully they're not reading the news and trying to figure out what's going on. Listen, Elizabeth, I know you have to jump back in court. Thank you so much. We'll catch you later. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks, Jesse.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're getting to your question.
So I'm going to stop sharing it right there. Those are the updates of the P. Diddy trial. And we all waiting on Kid Cudi to testify. That's what we all want to hear. We all waiting on that. So it's been fun covering this trial, going live. This is GPTV1. Check out the GPTV1 store. Check out the membership. And y'all stay blessed out there, fam.